Major Events of the Civil War by Linda Powell, Ottawa University, Course ID HPS 11053, American Experience, Professor Metz, April 30th, 2022. What are the 5 most important events in American life during the years of the Civil War from 1861 to 1865? I believe these to be the battle at Fort Sumter, the 5 civilized tribes, the 4 slavery states that did not secede from the Union, Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, and mass mobilization. Battle of Fort Sumter. The attack on Fort Sumter marked the official beginning of the American Civil War, which lasted 4 years, cost the lives of more than 620,000 Americans, and freed 3.9 million enslaved people from bondage. This battle was located in the Charleston Harbor in South Carolina. This was the first act of aggression by the South towards the Union, and Lincoln had made it very clear that he would let the South start the war, which they did on April 12, 1861. Major Robert Anderson and his troops surrendered the Federal garrison on the afternoon of April 14, 1861. Fort Sumter would remain occupied by Confederate troops for the next 4 years until all Confederate forces evacuated Charleston on the evening of February 17, 1865. Despite having surrendered, Anderson and his men are greeted as heroes when they disembark in New York. Captain Abner Doubleday notes later that all the passing steamers saluted us with their steam whistles and bells, and cheer after cheer went up from the ferry boats and vessels in the harbor. Anderson's valor during the attack and commitment to the duty are praised by the Union. Beauregard is also hailed for the first Confederate victory. He is later ordered to direct the troops at Bull Run. While the battle at Fort Sumter had not amounted to much, the symbolism of it was enormous. Intense feelings over the incident in Charleston propelled the nation into war, a war that would last for 4 long and bloody years. Fort Sumter was important in my mind because it was the first true act of aggression between the North and the South, which escalated the tension between the two sides and was the start of the Civil War. The next event that I would like to talk about is the 5 civilized tribes. These are the tribes of the Choctaws, Chickasaws, Creeks, Seminoles, and Cherokees, and how they joined the side of the Confederacy. The Confederacy gained the support of the 5 civilized tribes. These 5 tribes supported slavery, and many members of these tribes owned slaves themselves. These Indian tribes had been forced from their lands in Georgia by Andrew Jackson, and with the secession of the South from the Union, they had found common ground with the white slaveholders. Members of these 5 tribes were allowed to send delegates to the Confederate Congress, making them an important part of the South. The support of the 5 tribes was an essential part of the Confederacy. They needed the support and knowledge of the area that these tribes had. In my mind, it also helped lengthen the length of the war. The sheer knowledge of the terrain would have boosted the abilities of the Confederate Army. It didn't hurt that these Indian tribes were angry with the Union and had their own axe to grind. There were 4 slavery states that did not succeed. Delaware never voted to succeed the Union, even though they had a small slave population. Maryland was a state divided in their beliefs, but they also stayed in the Union. Missouri was the site of vicious fighting and the home of the pro-Confederate guerrillas, but they also never joined the Confederacy. And finally, Kentucky declared that it was a neutral state and that they did not want to participate in the fighting. This, however, did not work for them, and there was deadly fighting that broke out in the state. Delaware, Maryland, Missouri, and Kentucky were the 4 crucial slave states because they did not succeed from the Union. The key to these 4 states is that they all deprived the Confederacy resources and soldiers in the fight against the Union. I believe that this was important because it showed that the Confederacy did not have the support of all the slave states. I think that this is important because it shows that not everyone was leaving the Union. Without everyone supporting the cause, it becomes clear that they had more opposition than just the Union states. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863, as the nation approached its third year of bloody civil war. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforth shall be free. The Emancipation Proclamation applied to only states that had seceded from the Union, leaving slavery untouched in the loyal border states. It also expressly exempt parts of the Confederacy that had already came under control of the North. Most important, however, was that the freedom it promised depended upon Union military victory. Although the Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery in the nation, it captured the hearts and imaginations of millions of Americans and fundamentally transformed the character of the war. After January 1, 1863, every advance of federal troops expanded the domain of freedom. Moreover, the proclamation announced the acceptance of black men into the Union Army and Navy, enabling the liberated to become liberators. The Emancipation Proclamation confirmed their instances that the war for the Union must become a war for freedom. It added moral force to the Union cause and strengthened the Union support both military and politically. As a milestone along the road to slavery's final destruction, the Emancipation Proclamation had assumed a place among the great documents of human freedom. I included the Emancipation Proclamation as an important event in the Civil War because it was a proclamation that freed the slaves in the South. The Congress passed the Confiscation Act that allowed the president to use the slaves as he saw fit, which really did not make them free people. The African American population has always been political pawns. I believe that it continues today and will so until all Americans realize that we are created equally. Mass mobilization is how the people in the South and North reacted to the war. The Confederacy. By the end of 1862, the United States was consumed in an all-out war between the North and the South. They were engaged in what is called total war, which is a type of war where neither side distinguishes between military and civilian targets. This made the war even deadlier. The support of the South was waning, and they started drafting people, and they confiscated the economy, which put financial strain on the already stressed people of the South. Union mobilization. To fund the war in the North, Congress expanded the taxation on the citizens. The government also contracted with suppliers of food, weapons, and other materials that they needed to support the war efforts. The North also passed the Homestead Act, which gave settlers 160 acres of land in the West. This had two major implications on the war. The benefit was that it relocated people to the West and increased the agricultural input for the North. These benefits helped the North in their war effort. Women's mobilization. With men fighting on both sides of the war effort, it left women to run the farms and businesses that their husbands had to leave in order to go fight for the war. Not only did these women run the farms and businesses, but they also organized themselves into ladies' aid societies. These groups of women would sew and make uniforms, knit socks, raise money to purchase supplies for the troops, and they would offer aid to injured soldiers. I believe that the Civil War would have been fought at some point, but by fighting to keep the southern states in the Union, it ensured that the United States would become a world superpower. If we would have allowed the South to succeed, then that would have been harder to achieve. I also believe that we would have fought the Civil War at a later date, where more lives would have been lost.